JLF International Editions have a very special connectivity with London and its deep literary legacy. June 2024 marks the 11th year of our festival in the City of Words.
And so we could not be more proud to have weekends and events like this, where we're going to range widely, but frequently inspired by the collections we hold.
As Buddha says, Jivan Dukh hai, life is tragedy.
That is the core of, I think, what tragedy gives us, a reminder that as much as you laugh, you'll cry, and vice versa, as much as you cry, you'll laugh.
Marriage is a very complicated thing to write about.
The quality of the sessions, the commitment of the speakers, and also the excitement that the audience bring. This is a wonderful reenactment of Jaipur in London.
We're going to talk about the challenges that libraries are facing today. We're going to put some of those challenges in a historical context.
But history, by its nature, is much more porous.
And I love being able to see your academic heroes in person, being able to hear them within the room and to see the way in which they command the room. It's just magical.
Yeah, I think coming here would enrich your experience, vastly your knowledge, and I would not miss it for anything.
JLF at the British Library will bring books and ideas, poetry and music alive for readers and book lovers. We come together with our shared narratives and celebrate the human spirit. We try to understand our changing world. For we are each other's stories.
In India, the critical importance of hand hygiene is often overlooked, leading to increased school absenteeism and widespread diseases that jeopardize children's futures. To address this, Dettol introduced the school hygiene curriculum in 2015, utilizing engaging and innovative methods to teach children essential hygiene principles. To measure the impact of our efforts, we tapped into a universal motivator for all Indians, competition, and introduced Dettol Hygiene Olympiad, India's first and biggest hygiene competition. Through a strategic PR campaign, we maximized participation and impact, garnering 1,000 plus media exposures, reaching over 125 million people. With 100 plus partners like the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance, Dettol Hygiene Olympiad became a viral movement celebrated by leaders and educators across India. In 2023, the Olympiad engaged over 30 million children from 840,000 schools across all 28 states, 8 union territories, and 161 districts, conducted in 11 languages, including Sanskrit and Braille. The program ensured inclusivity across formal and religious schools like Gurukuls and Madrasas, truly embodying the leaving no one behind philosophy. Behavioral impact was substantial. Hand washing practices increased from 11% to 82%, and school absenteeism due to illness decreased from 36% to 23%. The campaign culminated in an award ceremony honoring 15 standout ambassadors, celebrating their commitment to promoting hygiene. Through our collective efforts, we have empowered children, paving the way for a brighter and healthier future.
Do you want an unforgettable passage to India? Come with us on the Teamwork Arts voyage. For over 30 years, we have taken India to the world and brought the world to India. We produce over 33 festivals in 72 cities and 26 countries. That includes the world's largest literary show. We bring you 3 magnificent experiences in 3 historic Indian cities. The greatest literary show on earth, Jaipur Literature Festival in Jaipur. Kabir in every sense. Mahindra Kabira Festival in Varanasi. And celebrating mystic poets and their timeless verse at the sacred Amritsar. This is your exclusive pass to experience the best of India's cultural bounty. Make your memories count. Book yourself a delegate package now.
I hope you've been enjoying the sessions so far. We're absolutely delighted to have you at JLF London at the British Library, and thank you, British Library, for this wonderful space. We have a very exciting session awaiting. We have Shekhar Kapur in conversation with Sanjoy Roy. Filmmaker, actor, TV presenter, and creative entrepreneur, Shekhar Kapur is best known for films such as Elizabeth, The Golden Age, Bandit Queen, The Four Feathers, and What's Love Got to Do with It. He's also renowned for the iconic film Mr. India, which has won and been nominated for numerous awards, including the Oscars, the BAFTAs, and Filmfare Awards. In conversation with Sanjoy K. Roy. Okay. You're going to give me a moment, Sanjoy. So Shekhar Kapur is the recipient of the Padma Shri. He's also the president of the Film and Television Institute of India since 2020. We're going to have a short film that's going to play for you, and then I'm going to let Sanjoy take over the stage as he plans to, and we're going to have Sanjoy and Shekhar join us.
क्या हुआ? अपने बेटे को ले जाओ यहाँ से।
जिस दिन वो फॉर्मूला मिल गया, जिसके इस्तेमाल करने से आदमी दिखाई ना दे, इनविजिबल हो जाए, उसका इंतजाम हो जाए। ओकेम्बो खुश हुआ।
Long live the Queen!
Our mission is to kill a queen. We will not fear the coming of the shadow of death.
Bye. Jeete raho. Alaikum salam, Auntie Aisha. What?
She still can't say it.
Assalamu alaikum, Aisha.
There you go.
Oh, that's exactly what I just said. Oh, is that Grindr? Anyone we should meet? No.
Now I'm getting married.
You are? Who's the lucky lady?
Don't know yet.
What do you mean?
No, I'm getting an arranged marriage. Well, assisted marriage. That's what we're calling it these days.
Dare I ask, what about love?
You grow to love the person you're with.
Thank you.
For those of you wondering why I'm in a session back to back, it's primarily because my colleagues want to keep me out of their hair and out of trouble, so they get me here. Ladies and gentlemen, Shekhar Kapur.
Thank you. Hi. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Shekhar, we've just come out of a science session with Sir Venki Ramakrishnan, the Nobel Laureate. And I want to start by asking you, every filmmaker, when they set out to make a film, obviously want to make a blockbuster, an Academy Award-winning film. So is there a science to creating the magic?
Well, there's a science to not create the magic. And the science to not create the magic is not make the film every character yourself. Every film that I've ever made, Every character is me. And if I cannot find myself in the characters, I really don't know how to make a film. Whether it's writing a story or shooting or telling the actor what to do. How do you do that? Otherwise, it's all somewhere there on your surface. And I'm not a trained filmmaker. I never went to film school. I used to be a chartered accountant. And I just fell into making films. So maybe if I had gone to film school, I'm the chairman of one now, but maybe if I had gone to, I would know how to technically make films. But now all my films are just emotionally made. The fundamental driving force is your own emotion and your own idea of what you saw in your life. And then creating imaginary lives, but based on the life that you have seen. Everything that you imagine, somewhere there's a provocation of something that you saw. So, and then you just create over that, like butter on toast, more jam.
What was fascinating, how many of you have seen Bandit Queen, the movie?
Oh my God.
Wow. Shekhar, so in one of the interviews, you say that in making of the Bandit Queen, you had to actually dig deep and find the rapist in you to be able to tell the story.
I think really when I did Bandit Queen, I was angry with myself because, you know, you remember in India when Puran Devi was around, she was always on the third page in a little picture. And then I went there and I actually saw what was going on and I actually looked at everything and I wondered myself, like, how do I make this film? And then I realized there was only one way to make it, is to blame myself. And to blame myself, because after all, I'm a Punjabi boy that carried this little burden of masculinity on my shoulders all the time. What were we taught? We were taught that you're the man, you know, you're the seducer, the girl is shy, and that's how girls are supposed to be. And I realized that's the result. And so I went out there to make a film about what rape really is, that it's not a sexual act. It's an act of absolute domination. And the only way I could make it is by understanding I'm the rapist, I'm also the raped. That's why we're so schizophrenic. And so really a large part of that, the anger of that film was directed right back at me. That's the only way I realized I could make that film. So there's a little story about me. My editor was Renu Saluja, who died, unfortunately. And when I used to go in the edit room, I would talk to her, and I said, now you cut it, but here's what I feel. And then she would hear me screaming and shouting in the other room. And then she said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I was very angry when I was making the film. Now, if you're going to cut it, how do I judge it unless I'm angry? So I would just get very angry and come out and say, Renu, that's not it, that's not what I meant, it's got to have more anger, more emotion. And she said, shut up, Shekhar, let me do my job. But you know, it was a film directed right back at myself.
It was also about power, that you again explored power in Elizabeth, both Elizabeth I and the Golden Age, but you looked at power very differently there than you did in Bandit Queen.
Well, Elizabeth was, it was really about the Virgin Queen, right? I remember. And I had a scene in that when I was filming where Elizabeth was in bed with her boyfriend, and some journalist must have got it. And the next day I saw on the Evening Standard, Indian director defiles our Virgin Queen. And I actually said, well, that's not. The film has to be. So the whole thing to me and to the writer, Michael Hurst, was, why did she have to declare herself a virgin to have power over men? Why? And so I found, well, that's still true. Why do women have to deny their sexuality, their sense of the feminine, to be powerful and amongst men? And I realized I have seen in my own life a person who's exactly like that. It was Indira Gandhi. It was so similar, the stories. A girl put onto a throne and said, okay, we'll deal with it later. We don't know who to make the queen or the king right now. And who actually took over. And you gradually realize how she just, over time, if you look at Indira Gandhi's costumes and you look at Elizabeth's costumes, they went from loose and flirtatious and very feminine to hairstyles that were severe, collars that went up to there, and, you know, sleeves that came up to here. So that's really, I just questioned the idea of virginity. And why was it so important to be, like, declare yourself a virgin? And in fact, historically, when did that ever happen? We saw the most famous portrait of Elizabeth is the one at the portrait gallery with her in a white face. So we just reinterpreted that idea of the white face being in. She puts white on her face and says, look, I'm a virgin, shaves her head off. Never actually happened, but provoked the idea of the film, which was, why must a woman deny sexuality when men don't? Men actually get much more sexual and powerful, so power is their sexuality. So that's what I was exploring. It's not a good word, but that's what I was looking at or trying to find out in Elizabeth.
Is your artistic gene a sort of inherited DNA stamped gene, or is it something that's evolved over time? Because for some reason you decided to become a chartered accountant. I mean, what were you doing there? And look at where you are now.
I'm a middle-class Indian boy. What else would I do? You want an in-depth answer?
We've just come out of a science session. It's all about in-depth.
I can't compete with that one. No, I think, we are all born artistic. And then gradually we are asked to deny, because we are asked to decide who we are by a whole system of education, job, career. And the worst thing that ever happened, the best decision I made in my life after I left accounting was to do away with a word called career. Otherwise, everybody, he's doing so well for himself. What does that mean? So, but when I was a kid, I don't know how many of you ever remember Delhi when it was not polluted. Very few, all right? I could see we used to sleep on the terrace, and I could see the Milky Way. There was a time. There was no light pollution, there was no sound pollution, there was no dust. And I remember when I was about 11 or 12, I asked my mother, I looked up and said, how far does it go? And I remember her answer was, it goes on forever. That word forever is what I'm still grappling with, still. And that puts the seed of storytelling in you, because ultimately, I was just learning physics where it said that, well, if you cannot measure it, it doesn't exist. And now you look at quantum physics and say, if you can measure it, it's not real. So which one is true? That's a scientific question. But I remember night after night, tears in my eyes, trying to stretch my imagination to imagine forever. I'm still doing that. That's what art is. Art is it's the effort of your finite self to somewhere reach out to the infinite and to touch the infinite. If you ever do, you'll be the Buddha, so you'll never make another film again anyway.
Or get the Academy Award.
No, maybe. But that's it. It's me trying to reach out and understand infinity. Oh, who am I in this place? What does infinity? What does the inability to measure anything? And if that's what's real, then who am I? And that's a constant struggle. That's where I am right now, sitting with you this morning, thinking about it. I mean, if you go to it's a strange thing though. If you go to my Instagram, I'm not saying go to my Instagram, but if I just wrote something this morning, I remembered. So where does it start? When did you discover the artistic gene? I remember once, my father used to take us trekking a lot. And I have this memory of being inside a tent, a green tent, with a bamboo pole with brown varnish. And there was a wire with a bulb, a naked bulb. And it was raining, and I'm looking at that tent, and I'm thinking, oh my God, those drops of water are going to go into that bulb, it's going to spark, and the tent's going to catch fire. And I'm cursing my dad for not being there. My mom's there. I don't see her, but she's there. But also, there's another tent with some family friends called the Thadanis, and I said, oh, that's good. So, but it used to create fear in my heart. I was about 30 when one day, I went off to London. I came to London, and I went back home to Delhi, and we were all having lunch together. And I said, "Dad, where did you take us?" And my mom said, "Oh yeah, that was Pahalgam." And as usual, your father was too busy with patients. He never turned up. And yeah, the Sadanis were there and everything. And then her face suddenly went white, and she said, "Shekhar, you were not born. I was carrying you." How does that? It was true. It's a true story. So where does it start? Is it at the time of inception or even before inception? So where does creativity actually, it's a wrong word. It's where does the ability to be in eternity, in a sense of timelessness, when do you start constructing time as past, present, and future? The great idea, I went to the National Portrait Gallery this morning. The greatest artists actually were desperately trying to deconstruct time and create art in which the past, present, and future exists all in that one little moment. It all starts there.
Do you have to be eccentric to be an artist?
Yeah, if eccentric means if eccentric means constantly trying to jump out of the box of reasonableness, it's a coffin. The day you become reasonable, you're going into your own coffin. So if they're constantly hitting against that box, trying to be unreasonable, trying to find out that which is not reasonable, yeah, if that's eccentricity, then art is eccentric, right?
You've had a really checkered sort of career in many ways. From accounting, you decided to go to advertising, and you were a model in between. You didn't want to be an actor, and Amitabh Bachchan, Mogambo, maybe, not Amitabh Bachchan.
I don't think I would have been a good actor. I do act now sometimes if it's a really good director. I give myself to them. It's not my responsibility. The shot's not good, that's your problem, not mine. But model was like, I was getting married, I needed money. Why else does anybody become a model? Right? So I just needed some cash, and somebody gave me a job, and I started to model. And I had a beard then, which I grew when I was in London, because I was 24. I started my own management consulting firm, and nobody would listen to me. So I grew a beard. I had a little baby face, stuck a pipe in my mouth, grew a beard, and said, "Now listen to me." And so I had that beard. And when they said, "Okay, you can model," I said, "Okay." I shaved my beard off, and they said, "No, we want your beard." So the beard grew, and therefore it's lasted now, 50 years. I've modeled with a beard. Money, pocket money. It's like...
Money. London has been your home for 3 decades or more.
Yeah.
And then recently you decided to up and leave and go back to the Middle East. What does London mean to you when you come back this time? It used to be the center of the arts world. In many ways, today it still is, competing with New York. Does it sort of revive you?
Oh, yeah. Every time I touch down and I say, actually, I've come home. Even 2 days ago when I touched down and I drove back, because every bit of London has a story for me. Everywhere I go, there's a little bit of story, so it has to be home. Middle East was a chance. I'm always looking for adventure, and I was part of the creating of the expo in Dubai. So I was on the board, so I went there, then I did a big show, and I liked the idea that I could be home in 3.5 hours. But I'm sure that'll change. I'm not sure where my next adventure will take me, but yeah, being an adventurer is also being a nomad, so.
Being a nomad, being an adventurer. Your first film, Masoom, and how many have seen Masoom? Oh, look at that. You have a whole tribe out there. Such a beautiful story. How did it come to you? And first, how much did it cost to make?
11 lakhs.
11 lakhs. 11 lakhs.
I was wanting to make a film.
Sorry, no. This bottle's not opening.
We need the invisible man to come to that. I wanted to make a film, and I had a story. And a producer came to me and said, well, why didn't you make a film? You look like an intelligent man. Let's make a film. So he took me to the financier, and I started to tell him the story of the film I really wanted to make. It was called Bardash, which is basically the fundamental theme was don't push a man to where he has nothing to lose or she has nothing to lose. A person, most dangerous person is where somebody has nothing to lose. Don't do that. So, and he just yawned, the finance. And in that yawn, was Krishna's mother saw the whole universe in a yawn. I saw the end of a non-existence career in that yawn. And what I did see was lots of pictures of kids around. And I just had read a book called Man, Woman, and Child. I'm just going to get sued for this, but there it is. And suddenly I thought, kids, what can I think of? What can I think of? And I narrated the story of Masoom and my producer kicking me from under the table, saying, what are you doing? But we made it. That's how, that's how things happen. So when you look at your life and look back and what decisions that you actually make, you realize you didn't make any decision. You just fell into decisions from one to the other to the other. And so that's how Masoom happened. And then, of course, he said, oh, you got to get somebody that's famous. I knew Shabana. I said, would you do it? She said, yes. So the film was made.
Much of this is sort of accidental. Mocambo, accidental?
Yeah, it was all, everything's accidental. I'm here, it's accidental. I'm alive.
By the way, accidental, 1 month ago he called me and said, I'll see you tomorrow in London. And I'm going, what? No, it's June. He said, no, my assistant told me to pack and I'm leaving for the flight. I said, no, 1 month later.
Yeah. No, Mogambo, I mean, yeah, when we cast Amrish Puri for the part, and he said, well, how do you want to play it? And I said, listen, why don't you're a theater actor, play Mogambo like Shakespeare. And he looked at me like that and said, Shakespeare? I said, Shakespeare for 11-year-olds. He said, okay. 11-year-olds who have never heard of Shakespeare. That's how Mogambo came out, really. Because he kept staring at me with those eyes, and I had to keep saying something, and then finally I hit on 11-year-olds in a village that had never heard of Shakespeare, now play Shakespeare to them. That's how it worked.
Were you surprised by its success?
Yeah. I was making a film for kids, actually. I thought I was making a children's film, and all the adults were watching.
Invisible Person.
What?
The Invisible Person.
Yeah. And all the adults still go to see it. They're still trying to make Mr. India 2. Every month I get somebody saying, let's make Mr. India 2, let's make Mr. India 2. And I say, well, what's the plot? There's another little thing about what's the plot. I have a cook who's listening to this. A number of writers are coming to me, Mr. India 2, the plot. One day he comes to me, he said, I've got the plot for Mr. India 2. Oh God, I said, no, I have a choice. I have to listen to the plot or have bad food. Which one? So I listened to the plot, and it was as good or as bad as any other plot or any professional writer had ever written. And I said, where did you find this? It is that on your computer you have this, that you keep looking at GPT chat. He just went into chat GPT, this 3-4 months ago, yeah. That was the first version of ChatGPT, and just came to me with the plot of Mr. India 2.
Bandit Queen was, of course, a totally different kind of film, and you collaborated with Farooq and Bobby Eden. Where's Farooq? Farooq?
Not here.
Farooq must have forgotten. He tends to, he's sleeping. One of the two. But that was really an incredible film. I remember when we came to see it at the Alliance Francaise, or not at the Alliance Francaise, the French Institute, which was the inaugural screening. Punita and I left that place and we didn't stay for the reception because you couldn't. You just felt like throwing up because it was so much of violence in that film.
And inherent violence, not necessarily, I mean, there's not that much blood in it, there's few, but psychological violence, huge amount of psychological violence. And I remember when, for those of you that actually know about, heard about or read the scripts, the first thing you're ever told is 3-act structures, right? And so when I went to, after Bandit Queen, when I went to Hollywood, they say, great film, can you speak English? I said, yes. And they said, but do you understand 3-act structures? I said, yes. I said, well, Bandit Queen didn't have the 3rd act. And I said, no, I know it didn't. They said, well, why? I said, because you would have been, your emotion would have been sublimated. I wanted you to come out, the 3rd act always is there to make the audience feel less guilty about their own lives or what is happening in society. So the 3rd act sort of is a great massage. And I deliberately did not
reconciliation.
The reconciliation, yeah. It's like, how many of you have seen Diwar, right? Yeah, so it was if Amitabh Bachchan doesn't die at the end. If he says, look, go to hell, I like my riches. It takes the guilt away. The 3rd act just takes the guilt away. And I said I deliberately did not have the 3rd act because I did not want the audience to feel any less guilty. I wanted to walk out of the film feeling guilty for what's going on. So I didn't have a 3rd act. That's why you were feeling like throwing up, because you were waiting. Oh, where's the 3rd act? It's not there.
When it went to Cannes and it got sort of embroiled in all of the controversy with Poolan Devi sort of rejecting the film for all the various reasons we know, disappointment, or did you just sort of let it go? Or have you let it go?
I couldn't understand it because, see, when the film was not written, I never met Poolan Devi till after the film. I met her after that. And the first thing she said, "Wo, gaane nahi hai film mein." I said, "Nahi," because she'd seen Mr. India, so I thought it was something like that. But
there was Nusrat Ka Gana. You have chosen.
There was, yeah, but she wasn't singing it. But the thing I felt, there were too many wheels within wheels. And it's really, I mean, who owned the rights? There was a book. But there was also a book in French where a French publisher had taken it, and they wanted Channel 4 not to release the film. Then Arundhati was standing against it. It was just so complex. I just said, okay, we'll see. But ultimately, there was also the censor board. The film was banned. But do you know what? Then we went to Supreme Court. And do you know what? We went, and there is a clause in our, in our constitution which says nothing can be considered pornography if it is there for the good of society. We won on that. Otherwise, they were saying it's pornography.
So many of you may remember the scene with Seema Biswas when, without any clothes, walking through the street with the people on both sides. Seema, that was a body double.
No.
Oh, that was...
You're not supposed to know that.
Yeah, exactly. So I was trying to do the Seema version, which is a body double. But when you shoot something like that, what do you have to do to be able to capture that moment, which was so extraordinary?
Well, let me tell you why I did that. Because there's a difference between nudity and nakedness. What happened to her was nakedness. We filmmakers are very good at nudity. We make an art form out of it. And I was so sure that anything that I did should not be nude. It should be absolutely stark naked, because that was what happening to her. But I wasn't even sure if I was going to have it stark naked. But when I was doing it, I had warned Seema, and she said, yeah, I'll do it. But I was sure when I got there she wouldn't, so I did have a body double ready. And then at one point when I was shooting it, I put on these machans all around the village so nobody could look in, and I could shoot the naked scenes. And at the last minute I said, well, that's cheating. So I asked for all the machans to be removed. I asked the villagers, can you please send all your women and children inside? So all the cuts that you see are cut later, because I'm going to do something that you might get very upset with, but I have to do it. And as soon as my crew realized that I was going to take my chan off, they thought we were going to be lynched because it was a high-caste village. But then I shot it, and my crew ran away. But we shot it, and then we just packed up, and I went to apologize to the head, the village head, and he said, वो ठीक है साहब, ऐसा कुछ नहीं, दूसरे गांव में ऐसा ही हुआ था अभी. So it just happened, same thing happened in another village, so it was fine. But no, I did not plan to make it so public. I made it ultimately, yeah.
One of the things that you've said often is that when you get to the set, you don't necessarily know what exactly you want or what you're doing. So how does that point emerge? How does the scene unfold? Or does it vary from day to day or scene to scene?
If art is exciting, if filmmaking is exciting, if what we do, if a painter knows exactly what he's going to paint, then why would he paint? If I knew exactly what I was going to shoot, then I'm just a guy. My DOP can do it, my cameraman can do it. But I plan like a general going to war, because you never know. Because, I mean, if you didn't show Four Feathers, I had every day 200 camels, 300 horses, 1,000 extras every day. But so you have to plan. You can't just take that, you're spending $1 million of somebody else's money every day. You have to plan. But you've planned for everything, but you've not planned for the moment. Life happens in the moment, at that moment. Art is ultimately happening in the moment, at that moment. Now, how can you plan for a moment that hasn't arrived? You can only plan for it, or it can only happen when it comes. And so sometimes I get afraid of my planning. So I will unplan myself. I will go to the set constantly telling myself, today they'll discover I'm a con man. Today they will discover I don't know how to direct. Something to panic my mind. And if I don't get panicked, I will listen to Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, because it's so chaotic. I will find some way to feel a sense of great chaos to get onto the set. And then there's my ADU saying, sir, so where's the first shot? Now I don't know. I've just got rid of, I'm in a state of absolute panic. And in that state of panic, somewhere I'm hoping that my mind has gone away, my ego has gone away, and God will speak to me, or something will speak to me. Like an artist with a huge canvas and say, yeah, I know I've got to shoot, but where do I take the first brush and where do I start? Then something happens. Always happens. In a state of panic, something emerges. It always has emerged. But before it emerges, I would go to my act. I would go to Kate Blanchett every day and say, what would you like to do, Kate? And she said, oh, Shekhar, you're doing this again. You're panicked, aren't you? I said, yeah, I'm panicked. So panic, in fact, if you watch my TED Talk, that's all it's about. It's about panic and creativity.
If the director is the general, as you just said, is the producer the dictator? And does the general ever sort of rebel against the producer?
Always. There's no art without rebellion. All rebellion is an art. Actually, the art of growing up is an act of rebellion. The art of living is an act of rebellion. But I would describe the producer as somebody who actually puts the boundaries on your rebellion, around. You can rebel as much as you want, but not beyond this, because then we don't have money. So then what you do is, then you start to dig deep.
But you have walked out of a film.
Yes.
Or two.
Oh, a few.
Or three.
A few. And then you start to dig deeper and deeper, because you can't go that way, you can't go that way. And therefore, the turmoil of the river, if you imagine, is within itself. The river rages deeper and deeper and deeper, and it gets upset, but it flows. So a producer's job is to make sure that it doesn't flood. A producer's job is to make sure that the river keeps within a certain banks. And I, as a director, will keep trying to break those banks, because the raging of the depth of the river is getting too much. So where do I go? I'll try and break the banks, and banks will throw me back. So it's a fascinating, creative, schizophrenic, exhausting process. But then, what have I said to anybody here that cannot relate that to life? It's exactly that. We're just doing it in a very, very, very concentrated way. That's exactly what we're doing. That's what drama is. You know, concentrate life into seconds instead of a year. I actually have an exciting job, I just realized. It's a good job. Yeah.
Elizabeth, a very white film made by a very brown boy. Cultural appropriation?
Yeah, you can say. One little incident, I wanted Richard Attenborough in it. And I said, so I called him and said, I'd like you to play Cecil. And he said, okay. And then working title called him, and then he called me and said, darling boy, I get one day I earn more than they're offering me for the whole film. I can't do that. And I said, Richard, we pulled out all the stops in India for you to make Gandhi. We gave you everything, and I actually did a part for nothing in it. Did you, my darling boy? He said, yes. And I said, yes. And I said, okay, so that's how we did it. Yeah, I was surprised. I tried to get out of it because I was jobless. I'd gone to LA, and I had no job. I would wait for a year, and then suddenly somebody offered me Elizabeth, and I didn't know what to do with it. I had no idea. I mean, the worst thing, I did not know about Elizabeth. I do not like historicals. It's something called the costume drama. So I remember Tim Bevan, who's the biggest producer here and in Europe, he had offered it to me. And I said, Tim, I know I said yes, but I can't do it. He said, and there I have no money in my pocket, sitting in Los Angeles, wondering how I'll ever get home. And he said, well, why? I said, because I don't like costume drama. And he said, well, I've seen Bandit Queen. That's exactly why I want you to do it. And I said, but I don't like British films. And he said, neither do I. I haven't seen a British film, a good one, for a long time. And he said, neither have I. And I said, well, actually, the only good British film I've seen for a long time is Danny Boyle's Trainspotting. And he said, absolutely, that's a great film. And I said, can I make the Trainspotting version of Elizabeth? He said, yes. So that's what you saw.
And version 2?
Golden Age? The Golden Age came out because it was so successful that they said you have to make it another one. I did not. So actually, there should be a version 3, because what Elizabeth was also about was the idea of divinity, right? How do you consider yourself divine and be mortal at the same time? It is conflict between mortality and divinity. That's why in the second film, that whole scene where she's getting very guilty, she ordered the killing of Mary and kept denying that she ordered it.
Signed the paper.
Yeah, she signed the paper. And then she was going through this trauma, because if she's divine, then so was Mary. So how could one divine person say, no, that's God-given? How could she go to somebody else? But so the conflict between divinity and mortality is a big conflict. And so the third one that I want to make is when Kate is old enough to do it, is because Elizabeth did actually she would not sit down. She would not lie down because she thought that she would die. And that was the conflict. I am divine, how can I die? It's a very fascinating conflict. You see it in a lot of politicians. We've seen it recently. They assume divinity.
Anointed. But Elizabeth, like Masoom, and in some ways Bandit Queen, but also your most recent film, is also about love.
Everything's about love.
But you haven't been very successful with love yourself.
No. No. I've been not very successful at containing it. I've been very successful in love. And love is the nature of the universe. Love is everything. But it's what I've not been successful at is containing it to singular love. Right? It's just flows. Love is a flow, like water. Water is flow. Love is flow. But it's there all the time. We're born in the womb of love. We live in the womb of love. We try and destroy it. But the existence in itself is the existence of the womb of love. Oh, I hope every girl is listening to me right now.
Your most recent film, I don't know how many of you've seen. Okay, not as many as Bandit Queen and and Mr. India, etc.
Give it time, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Again, a film in the making, right? I mean, it took some time to be created, and there were differences in while you were creating it.
It was my first rom-com. And I don't think anybody was quite sure what Shekhar Kapur is doing there, because I would say, that's not a joke. It's not really. And so I gradually shifted it to where I feel comfortable, was emotion. So what you'll see is something that is a rom-com. If you criticize it, it's a rom-com that doesn't know it's a rom-com. If you want to say good things about it, it's a rom-com that actually goes into a different realm, but rom-coms don't actually go into real emotion. This is something new. Tried.
You created a most magnificent opening at the Dubai Expo. You had hundreds of artists. You had aerial, and you had trapeze, and you had this brilliant visual thing that was going up all around you. That was exciting because it wasn't a producer per se. You could just order up things. Indulgence.
It was huge indulgence, and somebody paid for it. So why not? But we created something quite amazing. And I promised them at the end of it, kids will be dancing, adults will be crying, but everybody will applaud. And that's exactly what happened. I was very lucky to find somebody that was willing to put as much money that went into it. Unfortunately, I can't replicate that because the venue in which it was 8 stories high, and we were projecting 8 stories and dancing and creating theater at the top. So it was, I won't find that venue again. It was like a big, huge sphere in which we did that.
And what's the difference? What's the magic that you see in this upfront and up-close performance, which is live, as opposed to see what you see on screen?
Up close, up personal. You see, there is no greater architecture, there is no greater landscape than the human face. Because when we were kids, that's how we respond. We were watching somebody else's face, and these strange adult faces are going like that. But gradually, kids are watching that. And you get gradually to know and to learn to respond emotionally to the human face, to the human eye. The child is watching very carefully. So that emotional memory of the child lasts forever. And so that's why close-ups are essential to cinema, because the human face is so expressive, more expressive than anything else, visual effects, anything that you do. Nothing compensates for the close-up of the human face, because that's what we grow up with, watching. I'm watching you right now. I'm watching you nodding. I'm wondering what's going on in your head. I'm watching a smile. I'm watching your little eyes crinkle up. I'm watching everything. I started that when I was a child. And then I'm making my mind about how I am, who am I, in context of who you are right now. Oh my God, this is getting so philosophical. Let's change the project. Let's say, change it, yeah.
You know, you started by saying that every one of us is artistic or has an artistic gene. So what do we need to do to be able to hone it? Is it a science again behind that? Is it adventure? Do you have to work hard at it? Does it come naturally? What do you need to do?
Don't go to school. Unlearn. If somebody asks me, which they have often, start a school of creativity, I say, well, it'll be called unlearning. We learn not to be creative. We don't have to learn to be creative. We learn not to be expressive. We don't have to learn. I mean, it's so naturally, all of nature is expression. Everything is expression. And then over the time, we're taught, no, and we silo ourselves. You're a chartered accountant. Are you this? Are you that? And gradually you're taught. We're like this big Google. Education is this big Google of taking things away from you. So I would say, right now, unlearn. Forget everything that you were taught. Go back to it. Leave it. Let it go. And you'll find at the heart of it, it's all creativity. It's all expression. It's all spiritual. It's all God. It's all it's all eternal. It's timeless. Well, even time in itself is imagined. It's human imagined because our ego cannot handle anything that doesn't have a past, present, or future. I can explain that if you want. No, it's true because even if I take this glass and I take it from here and I put it there, I put it there. That gives me existence. That gives my ego existence. But if somebody says, well, the glass was here and here at the same time, as quantum physics says, then who am I in this equation? I need time. I need the concept of time to justify my ego, right? So the battle is to let that go, let your ego go and understand that that glass was always there, could always be here, and it's just an interpretation. All art that's what art will do to you. That's what all of us were born with that knowledge.
Does some of this unlearning come from the fact that later in life you discovered that you also were dyslexic? And is that one way to be able to, instead of going down the learning route, actually go down the creative route?
See, you've also started to come to my way. Learning and creativity are two different things. Look at that. Well done. No, my daughter told me, Dad, I'm dyslexic. And her mom said, don't listen to her. All school children say they're dyslexic because they get another extra hour to do their papers. So she said, okay, Dad, let's go to the net. And we tested ourselves. And of course, she was a little dyslexic. I was completely dyslexic. And I was like, all my life, I thought I was irresponsible. I'm not. I'm dyslexic. They will be. They're like, when I work with, I'm very well known here not to be able to do study schedules. They give you a big schedule. You got to achieve this. You got to achieve this. You got to achieve this. And the line producers that know me very well, they say, Shekhar will never read the schedule. And I thought, oh, Shekhar, you're so irresponsible. Everybody say that about you. I now know that I cannot read a schedule. I now know that I cannot read my tax papers. I know that I don't know how I became a chartered accountant because I can't read from one line to another. I'm dyslexic, right? But so dyslexic, so you do compensate, but then you discover that part of life that is out of the box. In the attempt to compensate for my dyslexia, I had to go beyond being normal. I'm abnormal. And I realized I loved being abnormal.
He revels in it. He revels in it. I'm going to open it up to questions in a second. But before I come to that, Shekhar, Pani, your passion project.
I know. How many of you are actually in the private equity business? How many of you have money? Just raise your hand. Well, come on. I'm Shekhar Kapur. I'm this big director. Somebody must have money. See what I mean? No, Pani is this something I wrote 20 years ago about a city that divides itself into two cities, and the upper city sucks up all the water, and drip feeds the lower city. They take up all the water, and the equation is very simple. Democracy still exists. You give us water. You give us votes. We'll give you water. And then what happens in that city because of that? It's expensive. When I first went out with the project, that's the problem. I went out with the project and the guys had said, what do you mean water is a problem? Look, I open the tap, the water's coming. And then I realized that's the issue with this world, isn't it? The decision makers' taps run. 90% of the people in this world, their taps will not flow. But then you're getting money from the people whose taps flow. How many people have taps that don't flow? There you see. That's why you won't give me money. It's true. That is what the whole concept of Pani is. The whole concept of Pani is, and water is just a metaphor for how power is distributed. You stop the flow of water. And I give a lot of speeches on water, and the one thing I say is that you guys have got it wrong, because everybody says, oh, water is such a precious resource, we have to manage it. No, you don't. You have to unmanage it. You have to let it flow. You have to treat like water is love. It has to flow. Our population can treble. As long as it flows, there's no problem. And the most interesting thing about water is we don't even know where it comes from. That little glass of water that if you drink, I bet you there are molecules that went through dinosaurs. And we know enough about water, we don't know why, that water has a memory of them. And now when you've drunk it, it has a memory of you. It's connected you and the dinosaurs. So there's some things about water we don't know. There is a reason why water is part of every religious ceremony in any faith in the world. Drops of water here and there, and yet when it comes into our flush, we'll say, "Arey, pani nahi aaya yaar, there's no water in my flush." Of course there isn't. It was never meant to be. Water is a community resource. Water is love. Mere flush mein nahi aaya. What are you talking about? So, raise your hands, people who actually believe what I say. Yes? I'm not asking for money, I promise you. Right. Okay.
Water is, going to become the biggest issue of wars, and even in India, Delhi went to the High Court or Supreme Court to get water from Haryana, for example. In Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, that's forever. And the next big wars will be about water.
It's already going to be war. Next week, Singapore and Malaysia, China and India is going to be a big war, because what are we going to do when the glaciers are melting? There is the whole sense of when Bhagirath asked Ganga to come and take away the sins of people, Ganga said, "I cannot come because I'll come with such force, I'll destroy everybody," which is how Ganga used to come out. It was huge. The force that came out from the glacier was huge. Now the glacier is retreated, you could drive a truck through it. As our glaciers are melting, the only way I can get people's attention is in India is, "Bhaiya, Ganga nahi bahegi." The Ganga won't flow anymore. Where are you going to put your dead bodies? What are you going to do? वो घाट, वाराणसी के घाट का क्या होगा? It'll either be dry or it'll be in flood.
वाराणसी के बारे में मत कहना, वहाँ तो अभी नया भगवान है.
I am safe.
Sorry. Questions. Do we have mics? So, one from Naomi, one from Shivani. We'll take it in clusters. So, 1, 2, 3, and then I'll come to the back. Yeah, Shivani, right there.
So Sanjoy has navigated us so beautifully with all your films. I'm taking you to a very quick comment that you made. Your daughter got diagnosed with dyslexia. So obviously she was aware. There's this huge awareness of mental health. You were not. So you lived and grappled with these difficulties. Would Shekhar Kapur have made all these films had he been diagnosed and found a solution and a process?
No, hold that. One more here. We'll take 3 questions at a time, and then you can. So would Shekhar Kapur have made stuff if he was diagnosed early and found a solution?
Mr. Kapur, your Hindi cinema during your childhood, which you must have watched, how do you think it has influenced your work? Not as an accountant, but as a filmmaker.
Hindi cinema influenced Naomi.
Thank you both for a wonderful, wonderful session. I came from the chartered accountancy stables as well, really? And like you, I escaped. My question regards the great Rabindranath Tagore. He's one of my great passions. I feel he's hugely under-recognized in India, even in Bengal, that I regard him as one of the most myriad-minded geniuses ever to walk the planet. Virtually no field of human endeavor he was not involved in and excelled at. And as your particular field of expertise is cinema, I'd be interested in your views on his contribution to Indian cinema, please.
So Tagore in cinema, influence, Hindi cinema influence, and if you knew and diagnosed and found a solution, would you be you?
There is so much more to explore about Tagore in cinema, and I'm amazed that we haven't done it, right? So that's an easy question. We have to do it. Influence of Hindi cinema, it's a tough one, because Hindi cinema, when people say, "Oh, you're so melodramatic," I say, "No, we're mythic." That's the influences. We lead the East. In the East, we lead mythic lives. We see everything as melodrama, or as a mythic event, what the West sees as melodrama. If we go to a funeral, we don't cry. There are Rudalis who are coming that make us cry. Whereas there's a funeral here, it's very stoic, you don't cry. So with different cultures that way, we see falling in love as mythic, we see betrayal as mythic, we see death. Everything is a mythic happening, and therefore it's highly melodramatic. And if you ever look at Elizabeth again, tell me, it's very highly melodramatic film. It is very highly, because I told the actors, you don't be melodramatic, but for God's sake, let me be melodramatic. So that's the influence of Hindi cinema that I've brought to the West, is the melodrama and the unabashed quality of mythology. When I was a kid, I was asked to, no, when they were kids, some years ago, I was asked to do some theater workshops with kids with mental challenges. I had each one of them myself. Somebody said, oh, dyslexia, inability to look at numbers, all kinds of things. And you're absolutely right. If all that had been analyzed when I was a kid, I would have gone to special school. I would not have become a director. It's true. I mean, I've thought about this often enough. What would have happened to me, somebody that is so screwed up in my head, as I am, as you can all tell today, what would have happened to me if somebody had analyzed me and said, yeah, let's go special school, mein rakho. Go send him to special school. I don't know. I don't, thank God. It's not happened to me.
Good argument there. Somewhere in the middle, questions in the middle. So one right here, and second row, and then I'll come to the back in the next round. Yeah.
Okay, from very serious topic, first of all, what a pleasure. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be in person. So on a very, very lighter note, Mr. India, I'm absolutely Bollywood, huh? Everything, I breathe and eat Bollywood. So, Mr. India, you said it was a kids' movie you were trying to make. But of all the movies, and believe me, I've seen
question
thousands,
short, because a lot of people.
Yes, is that I have never ever seen a more sensual song than Kaate Rahi Katte Ye Din Ye Raat in Mr. India. And I'm thinking,
How good is that for kids?
I mean, no, but I mean, I'm just pointing it out. It was, till today, it is my favorite song. And Sridevi ji is, of course, so amazingly, how did that come in there?
Yeah, things happen because they happen. I'll tell you how that song happened. Feroz Khan, Bonnie Kapur, who's the producer, came to me and said, I just saw Feroz Khan shoot Sridevi. Nobody can shoot her as sexy as this. And I said, oh, really? Now watch. That's how that happened. Yes, right. It was a challenge.
Go ahead. They were not
No,
married
of course not. Right.
Mr. Kapur, thank you for this session.
Where are you?
I'm here.
Oh, yeah, there you
Hi. Masoom and Mr. India are my favorite films ever. So thanks a lot. What I want to ask is, what is your current view of films that are coming out of Bollywood? Are we witnessing an end of an era of iconic films, superstars, given the age of hyper-information and an audience with an attention span of 90 seconds of Instagram reels?
End of superstars.
End of superstars, I'll take that. Yes.
Go ahead, Shekhar, answer that.
Anybody
in the middle?
Hello. Well, Bollywood, the superstar, the mythic idea is based on the fact that the audience have low attention span. So if you have nothing to say, shout.
Or dance.
Or dance. Or create a big action scene. It's all based on low, because if you go to a theater, remember how it came up? If you go to a theater somewhere, or they're much better now, but you had a baby crying, you could hear the fan, you were sweating because the air conditioner wasn't working, there were people running up and down, there were rats under your feet, and the sound was bad and everything.
Popcorn.
How could you not make something that had to keep you going moment to moment to moment? So we started TikTok as a 3-hour movie.
Thank you, Shekhar Saab. Two very quick questions. One, time machine. I don't even need to ask the question, so you can tell me. I grew up watching Mr. India as a child and absolutely loved it, and I had to wait many years to watch Bandit Queen. And I finally watched it. This is where the second question is. I finally watched it in the cinema 10 years ago in Manchester, but only because the intellectual property belonged here and not back there at home. Why have we got such an issue in terms of rights and archiving great Hindi cinema, especially when there's a conversation about re-releases taking place?
What's the question?
and archiving old film.
Here, they do that very well.
No, I'm talking about Hindi.
Oh, no, we have. Now we've started. There's, the archives of India. They do a really good job. Some of the negatives just go, We were not very good at preserving negatives, but they are, now, of course, with the new technology, we can restore negatives quite easy, and we do archive them. We do.
There's not more than one person claiming to own the rights of some very significant films that have passed.
Well, it's like Nusrat, right? All his music was owned by hundreds of people because he kept signing it off, but that's now been contained. The last question at the back there, yeah.
Hello there. Thank you very much for this. It sounded like when you started, you were quite young and empty and unsure. And now we see you at the end of that careerless and decisionless path, but we see you full of knowledge and certainty. So for anyone at any age or career path, when they find themselves, whether it be found with that label, where they would wish they wouldn't have that label, and basically in that point where you find yourself that you should listen, but at the same time you want to rebel. So in a position of panic, as you mentioned, in our lives now, looking around at the landscape, how can we hone back to that internal grace so we can find back at least the next step for the path? So we can maybe one day find ourselves in your position and go like, look, my path was also crazy, but here how is it? How do we transfer that young blood to that older blood? So hopefully one day we get our own transfusion.
Listen, I can tell you, if you ask me, the three most important words of creativity are, I don't know. I don't know. And that's what you have to hang on to. The day you say, I know, your career is over, you'll make boring films. It's just a constant idea of not knowing. Therefore, constantly in a sense of wonder. If you cannot maintain a sense of wonder, then give it up. You go old, die. What else is there then? If there's no sense. Time up, sense of wonder. Okay.
Constant sense of wonder, Shekhar Kapur.
Thank you.
The JLF International Editions have a very special connectivity with London and its deep literary legacy. June 2024 marks the 11th year of our festival in the City of Words.
And so we could not be more proud to have weekends and events like this, where we're going to range widely, but frequently inspired by the collections we hold.
As Buddha says, Jivan Dukh hai, life is tragedy.
That is the core of, I think, what tragedy gives us, a reminder that as much as you laugh, you'll cry, and vice versa, as much as you cry, you'll laugh.
Marriage is a very complicated thing to write about.
The quality of the sessions, the commitment of the speakers, and also the excitement that the audience bring. This is a wonderful reenactment of Jaipur in London.
We're going to talk about the challenges that libraries are facing today. We're going to put some of those challenges in a historical context.
But history, by its nature, is much more porous.
And I love being able to see your academic heroes in person, being able to hear them within the room and to see the way in which they command the room. It's just magical.
Yeah, I think coming here would enrich your experience, vastly your knowledge, and I would not miss it for anything.
JLF at the British Library will bring books and ideas, poetry and music alive for readers and book lovers. We come together with our shared narratives and celebrate the human spirit. We try to understand our changing world. For we are each other's stories.
Hawthornden Foundation is delighted to be among the sponsors for the Jaipur Literature Festival once again. The foundation has 3 writers' retreats, an ancient castle in Scotland, a villa on Lake Como in Italy, and our new premises, a house in Brooklyn, New York. These are places where writers can go in peace to finish a piece of work. In addition, we fund the oldest literary prize in Britain, the Hawthornden Prize, and we are very happy to be sponsoring and giving grants to a large number of festivals, literary organisations and other activities. I'm Jonathan Bate, Chair of the Foundation, wishing everyone all the best for a great festival here in Jaipur.
Madrid and Valladolid beckon in June as JLF Valladolid in Spain presents its second stellar edition.
How different is Indian mafia from any other mafia? And I think what you do, bringing all your Indian writers here to us, to speak to us, is going to contribute hugely to that change of a scenario.
I hadn't planned to be an actor. Acting used to be a hobby of mine. A fertilization of minds takes place. People with great intellect, great sensitivity, great ability to express themselves gather, interact with each other, inspire each other, help create new ideas for each other, and become a catalyst for each other.
Spain hasn't had a significant presence in India, and India has never had a significant presence in Spain. And so for JLF to reach out in this way, it's actually building a bridge across a chasm. And I think it's absolutely wonderful to see this happening.
You see, it makes a difference who's writing the story. Being a writer, an Indian writer in Spain, there have been very few avenues to connect. And finally, we're going to have the forum, which is going to make that possible.
People's identity was no longer thought of in terms of religion. JLF is just fantastic, and I think that wherever it goes, it has a positive impact. So here as elsewhere, I think it's been a tremendous experience, both for those of us who often come to JLF and for the people of Valladolid who haven't had the experience until today.
A magical long weekend immersed in literature, history, cuisine, and the richly interwoven traditions of India and Spain.